One that like now has.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
You there, Jeremy? It's totally just. He was in today and he was,
She was?
he likes to stop by and he's gonna get. Yeah. He's gotta get his grades.
No conflict.
Okay.
Let's see if that works.
It's already.
No.
Where's?
They- Is the Troy Hall for Robert, or is that the Troy Hall you used to? Rep? Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is the appointed hour of 7 o'clock and we're trying to dial in our attorney and it looks like we've been successful. Good work, Janie. And before I call the meeting to order, I'd like to invite anyone who does plan to speak tonight to sign in on the citizens' remarks sheet, sign-up sheet over here. And with that, I'd like to call our meeting to order. And first item of business, if you all will please stand and join me as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the agenda. And members of council have any additions or changes or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is this being added, the social services?
That'll be part of the city manager's report.
Okay, so we
I
don't need to
believe-
make that a separate.
Did you? New business item. Let's put that under as 15.3. Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome.
And for the record, I will be recusing myself from that line item because I work at Heselman Kearney.
Very good.
How are they involved?
What's that, Leslie?
How are they involved?
Brian's the city attorney for Buena Vista.
Nick, let me ask you to pull that mic down so folks can hear you.
Yes, Brian is the city attorney for
As a law partner.
And they're also handling the closing, and the firm is going to be receiving payment as a result of the closing.
Thank you, Jeremy. Also, item 15.2, the grant application regarding the Hope House. My ambition is to move that after proclamations for Lori Turner and Greg Madsen rather have been traipsing around our community. They were at Buena Vista City Council meeting earlier, and I know they'd love to be here for the entire council meeting, but I assured them we will limit their time here as much as possible. And with those two modifications, one addition and one modification, if there's no objection, we will approve the agenda. And is approved. Thank you. I will invite first, Sheree, if you want to come forward to carry out the local law enforcement officer and support proclamation, support staff. Turn this around so that people at home can hear us as we embrace this proclamation. Thank you for being here. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15 as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which May 15 falls is National Police Week. And whereas the men and women of the law enforcement agencies serving the city of Lexington, county of Rockbridge, the town of Glasgow, and the city of Buena Vista provide a vital public service by safeguarding the rights and freedoms of citizens in the Rockbridge area. Whereas safety of our citizens is a primary goal of local, state, and national government. And whereas law enforcement is one of the few chosen professions that require the willingness to at any moment put themselves in harm's way to protect others. And whereas since the first recorded death in 1786, there are currently 23,785 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty. And whereas the Lexington Police Department, Rockbridge County Sheriff's Department, Buena Vista Police Department, Buena Vista Sheriff's Department, Glasgow Police Department, Rockbridge Regional Jail, and Virginia Military Institute Police are comprised of the finest officers, supervisors, administrative, and support staff that can be found within the profession. Now, therefore, we, the mayor and the city council of Lexington, call upon all citizens of Lexington, Virginia, to observe the week of May 14 through May 20, 2023 as Police Week, during which all of our citizens may join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to their communities, and in so doing have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all citizens. And we urge all citizens to take the time to thank those in law enforcement for the important service they provide to all of us. We further call upon all citizens of the city of Lexington to observe May 14 through May 20, 2023 as Peace Officers Week, in honor of those law enforcement officers who through their courageous deeds have made the ultimate sacrifice to their community or have become disabled in the performance of duty. And let us recognize and pay respects to the survivors of our fallen heroes. Adopted this 4th day of May, 2023. On behalf of a grateful community and council, thank you for what you do and for representing your team here tonight, and invite you for any comments that you'd like to make.
I'd just like to thank you guys, the council and everything for your support, and our community as well. Without you guys, we couldn't do any of it. Appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us. Terrific. Janie, I know you'll love to be invited up here, so come join me. Because it's also the 54th Annual Professional Municipal Clerks Week. 54, you've been out a long time. Whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. And whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. Whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of the professional municipal clerk. Now, therefore, I, as mayor of the city of Lexington, do recognize the week of April 30 through May 6, 2023 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerk, Janie Hostetter, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. Adopted this 4th day of May, 2023. We pause now, and I invite all citizens as well as council to pause the balance of this week to express our appreciation for your dedication, tenacity, patience, and quest to always get things settled and well for all of our citizens, and especially for our city manager and attorney. So, Janie, thank you for all that you do. I'll invite you, any comments that you'd like to make?
Thank you guys for letting me do this for another year.
Very good.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations. Always fun to recognize work well done and remind everyone the team effort it takes to be successful. No one on this dais is able to achieve success, in my opinion, without the entire cast. So thank you for all of our staff and the support that they provide council. Next, I would like to call on City Manager for item 15.2, consideration of a request for a joint grant application to support the Hope House Sober Living Recovery Home.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have several individuals here tonight to support this application, and so I'll go over it briefly for you. The Rockbridge Community Foundation has been working with Recovery Rockbridge, which is a 501c3, to put in place a program and facility called Hope House so that they might attend to the needs of those individuals in our community, men primarily at this point, because you don't put men and women in the same facility, who are suffering from opioid abuse or substance abuse. They are seeking a grant from the State Opioid Abatement Authority because funds are available for local programs and uses that do meet the needs of this group of individuals who suffer from substance abuse. They're looking for our support because they cannot apply for the grant. It has to be through a locality. Rockbridge County, City of Buena Vista, and City of Lexington administratively thought that it's best to work together. And the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors did approve their support for this grant at their last meeting. Tonight, the Buena Vista City Council did approve their support for the grant and additional funding from their funds received from the Opioid Abatement Authority and from the direct payouts from the settlement, the nationwide settlements for the defendants in the opioid lawsuits. Buena Vista will be submitting the grant on behalf of our 3 localities. They're requesting $210,231 in grant funds, supported by $325,000 of cash and in-kind local support. There are 3 things that are requested from you this evening, 2 from the Community Foundation, and 1 that I'm requesting from City Council. And 1 is that you do approve the grant so that we can all move forward in step to try and provide this facility and these services for those individuals who do need it in this particular instance. The second is that I do not, however, recommend we use any of our current opioid funds for this program. I believe it's a great program. I think it'll have good success, but I would like to see it get off the ground before we invest more money in it locally. They've got enough money to satisfy the needs of the grant. And as I indicated earlier, the City of Buena Vista has supplied a local match that helps further the cause, if you will, of the grant that's going to the OAA. The third thing I'd like City Council to do on behalf of us is apply and authorize me to apply, I should say, for the gold standard from the Opioid Abatement Authority. And this just allows us to be very sure that we are meeting all the criteria for use of the funds that come from the opioid settlements and from the Opioid Abatement Authority. We have several sources of funding. The Opioid Abatement Authority has put together a single, if you will, guide to make sure localities apply and meet the requirements of those settlements. So there's a benefit for us to adopt this program. And the Opioid Abatement Authority is also providing a 25% increase in funds from their payouts to localities who adopt these standards. So it's a real win-win for us. And I would again ask that you authorize me to apply for this gold standard. So those are my recommendations, and I think a little information on the program. I do know that the director of the Community Foundation is here that can also provide some additional information if you allow her a few minutes.
Thank you, Jim. And before we hear the presentation, Nick, I'll invite you to step down regarding this issue.
Sure.
I will. And at this time, I'd like to call in Lori Turner, if you'd like to come forward. Did you?
Sorry, I'm Lori Turner, the Executive Director of the Community Foundation, and this is Greg Mattson, who is on my Community Foundation board. I asked him to join me tonight. here, obviously, as a board member to support and also to be my ears, because I'm hearing impaired. So if he has to repeat any questions to me, that's why. But the Hope House is a project within the Community Foundation. We generally try to take projects on that are equivalent to the most critical community needs at any given time. We took on the COVID-19 relief fund during the pandemic, and then we started up the Walker program during racial tensions. And the Hope House seems to be the appropriate thing for us right now, given the drug epidemic and the fact that there are no sober living homes in this area. So we have asked city councils and the supervisors to supplement this project. We have raised the renovation costs for the house through private funding of our own, but we want to make sure that we can financially sustain it before we build it. And so that is what this ask is for the $210,000 a year, which will provide 24/7 staffing at the house and allow 6 months at a time to lead rehabilitation programs and continue their recovery journeys, and hopefully leave being able to sustain that and stay clean.
Excellent. Members of council have any questions for Lori or Greg?
Could I add one comment?
Please do.
I think most of you know the hospital does a community health assessment. It's on our website. It's a good 100+ pages. And addiction and behavioral health are at the top of the list of needs in this community. So we, as a hospital, and we have our board chair, Williams here too, and Marilyn's on our hospital board. We've given $20,000 to the project through our foundation as a way to help support this effort. We think it's very important. We appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
And Jim, just to confirm, the request, your recommendation and the request is in support of the application. Will there be a financial, a fiscal agent? Will the city have any responsibilities?
We do not. The city of Buena Vista, again, is applying for the grant and will be the fiscal agent or the administrator. They will administer the grant.
Gotcha.
They'll
Thank
take
you.
the lead on it.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Yeah, go right ahead.
Jim, I have a question. If we don't use the opioid,
A little closer to.
if we don't use the opioid funds for the Hope House,
Mhm.
did you have plans for anything else yet?
At this immediate time, no, I do not. Clearly, if city council desired, because we have nothing else in the wings, we could certainly use these funds. We do have a significant period of time to use these funds today. In the future, they are really going to be looking at these funds being used on an annual basis. But since the program is very new, they're giving us till the end of 2025 to use these initial allocations. So I guess my caution is that even though we don't have a new program, another program, perhaps, I should say, this is relatively new. They can come back to us in 6 months or 12 months and say, here's what we've done with the funds. Here's the progress we've made. Here's our needs now, 6 months or 12 months from now, and request the funding. And we're not in any danger of losing any funding in that instance. So that's my recommendation or my insights, but certainly city council has the authority to allocate funds that you feel is necessary.
In working out in the community in various organizations and hearing about what goes on in the courtroom and in the circuit court, I actually contacted Dennis Ayers to find out about some actual data about drug cases. And he said in the last 2 years, he actually did the calculation, and there were 522 felony cases in the last 2 years. 189 or 36% of those included a drug charge. Those statistics do not include serious crimes where drugs may have been a factor, but they were not charged. And I think, in just my opinion, in this region, this small area, those numbers are just too significant to ignore, in this small community. And I have some real concerns about the message that we're sending if we don't provide funding for the startup, or at least give them some assurances that we'll be helping them in the future.
Jim, you you made the point that they have adequate funding to start up. And if we were to take the guidance from Ms. Alexander, would we be committing all of our funds through 2039? Is that exactly? So if they don't need the funds now, what do you see us providing them if they don't need the startup funds now? Because I think it's actually it's prudent. We don't know what the future might hold. I don't know if a drug court were to start in Rockbridge County. We don't currently have a drug court. Would any of these funds be able to be used to assist with that? I don't know enough about how these funds might be used, because Hope House might not be the only way that we can help with the crisis.
I wouldn't envision us using all of our funds for that, because just our own police department is spread very thin because of the kind of work that they have to do in working with cases like this, with drug cases as well as mental health and a combination of that. One of the things that I learned working with the Community Health Foundation, who disperses thousands and thousands of dollars of grant funds all over the area, was one of the things that I learned was that if you don't help with a startup, or if you don't give some commitments to part of the funding, then once the startup, it's difficult to plan beyond the startup if you don't know where all the money's going to come from. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You can start up and you have the funds for that, but what happens the next day for operating?
So I guess my question would be, if they have all the funds they need for the startup and they don't yet need our funds, what would our funds be used for if they're not yet needed?
I believe Lori Turner might be able to answer that, but I would say, I think she shared with me that potentially there are training needs that would come up rather quickly. But beyond that, I've not heard anything more, so I'll let her answer to that.
We have raised funds for the renovation. The Community Foundation is committed to making up whatever that differential is. Money could go toward that, which we would not have to get from our personal donors, but we're committed to getting that money from our donors if we need to. That's the commitment we made when we took on this project. Understanding that there are three pots of money. There are your direct distribution that you have in hand, and then there's what they call the individual distributions, which you only get if you participate in a individual or cooperative partnership grant. So that money only comes to the city if they participate in a partnership grant. That does not have to be my grant. That can be any grant that the city decides to participate in from now until April of 2025. Also, you can opt into what they call the gold standard, which gives you an additional 25%. And again, that also has to be put into a particular project. It doesn't have to be this project, but a project. So that's the third pots of money that's available. Could we use some money toward it that the Community Foundation wouldn't have to raise? Yes. Can we wait until later and allocate as Jim wants to do? Yes, we can do that too. Either way, the Community Foundation is committed to making this happen.
If the money is allocated, can it go to multiple projects, or does it have to be one project from the city?
The money that you have right now, like there's allocations each fiscal year. So what you have in hand right now is for fiscal year 22 and 23. You will get more funds allotted to you for fiscal year 24. So the fiscal year 22 and 23 funds would be allotted to this project if you chose to do that. And then there would be additional money come fiscal year 24 for other projects. Does that make sense? Is that your question?
Well, could we split it if we were to give the Hope House
Yes.
part and somebody else another part?
You can designate whatever portion you want.
Okay.
Yes.
I agree, absolutely. We could take the money we have today and fund 2 or 3 or 4 initiatives should we desire to.
Right.
if there's a desire to do that by city council, as Ms. Turner noted, the opioid abatement authority distribution does get tied directly to a grant. And so if you had some desire to do that, I would recommend that those are the dollars that you direct toward this project. And at this point in time, we have $8,663 from that opioid abatement authority. And with that, if you pass the gold standard, we'd get another $2,166. So if you're going to use anything at all, I would say take it from that pot, some or all of it. But the rest of that, there are fewer requirements attached to it. We could use it for, as long as it was for opioid abatement activities, we could use it for any number of programs at any time. We're just limited on the opioid abatement direct grant because that's the rules they made, that it has to go with a grant itself.
Do we need to make a decision tonight about the funds?
About the grant.
Well, we have to
About
make
the
a
fund
decision
part.
about the grant, and if we want to use these direct opioid abatement authority funds, we'd have to make that decision tonight as well, I believe, because it is tied to a grant, not necessarily this one, but a grant. Tonight's the time to use it for this grant. If you don't use it, then this grant's off the table until maybe a next go round if they apply for something else.
And are you aware of any other grants that are out there needing this money?
This is the only grant in this round. I believe at this time next year, or approximately this time next year, there will probably be another grant round. I mean, the opioid abatement authority is brand new, but I believe that's their intention. And I'm sure there'll likely be some in the future, but at this point in time, this is all we have to choose from.
Ms. Strong?
What did the county do? I know they're
county-
supporting the grant. Are they allocating their funds as well?
They are not allocating any funds, no.
Okay.
I think they're in the same boat that the city managers, let them get up and running and then welcome them back to talk it through. Mr. Smith?
I was going to ask Marilyn if Dennis gave any indication of the number of drug charges that were brought forward that were related to opioids.
Didn't get into those specifics, but he just said drug related.
Oh, okay. The reason I ask, I sat on a grand jury about a year ago, and all the drug charges that came through was all about meth. And I'm looking at the criteria here that says funds exclusively used to support programs and efforts that deal with the impacts of opioid addiction and related recovery issues. And I'm trying to make that link. And
I mean, I'm in the same boat because I've served on grand jury maybe 3 times in the last 6 or 7 years. And 90% of the indictments that were handed down were drug related. And if they were not drugs, which was basically meth, then it was larceny, things like that, that were related to getting drug money. And this is a real impact on the community because those people that are indicted and convicted, they have families. And then there's the breakdown with Department of Social Services, education, a little bit of every industry and organization has been affected. Employment, businesses trying to get people to work. They try to work a little bit, and because of the drugs and their habits, they can't hold a job long. So it's affecting all of us in this room, whether we see it or not.
I will add to Chuck, if you don't mind, the funding, if you opt into the gold standard and a part of this project, it actually has to be, it's not just drug money, it has to be a new project. It cannot support an existing budget or an existing program as part of that criteria.
And Mr. Smith, I would note that I believe, Mr. Turner can correct me if I'm wrong, but there is an educational component of this program. And even though somebody may be, if you will, addicted or abusing some other substance, sometimes they overlap into opioids or similar uses. So training on how to avoid other abuse for those who are not using opioid substances also counts. So you could have somebody on meth who's going to cross over to opioid and you can give them counseling on how to avoid abuse in general, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, yes. 100% of anybody who is served within the project needs to have some kind of opioid prevention education for this grant to be eligible. And we will provide that.
Ultimately, the funds provided to the localities that are intended to be used to address the impacts of opioid addiction, that might not just be on the individual that was addicted. It could be the families that have suffered. And as we learned about the fact that we might get funds through this process, something that I've been hearing from the community is to say, don't forget about the families that have been impacted by this. And so my question would be, well, Hope House, is there a component that helps the kids, the families, or is the focus truly the individuals, getting them sober, getting them clean, getting them, back into society, and not addicted? Because I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there are families, there are kids that have been torn apart by this crisis, and that when someone is addicted, there's other people that we could maybe help with these funds.
Yeah. I think we're starting small, but going to grow. And these men, when they re-assimilate in society, if they have kids and they have a job, they can resume child support and perhaps even reconnect with family. Drugs can tear families apart, as you mentioned. So if they're successful after their 6-month period and can re-assimilate and get their life together, perhaps they can better support their families.
But funds wouldn't, I guess my point is, if we were to not initiate, provide funds, and we might in the future, I mean, I think that's Jim's point. We would want to support it in the future, but if we would also want to take a wait and see approach to see what else might happen, just like the county's doing in our community, to help, again, all of the people impacted by one person's opioid addiction, the kids. I think about that. Our funds could be used for a program like that may not exist just yet, but it might in the future, especially when you look at funds coming to us till 2039, and at least in the same way with the county and so on.
I believe that is correct. However, as I indicated earlier, we get sort of a buy this year, and we get to use these funds for a couple of years. In 2027, whatever we're allocated, it's the intent of the OAA that we spend it in 2027. So we're not going to be able to accumulate funds at that point. Whatever we get, we hope we have a program that's ongoing or a need that exists that we can allocate those funds to. So it is new and evolving. So I would just say there's probably not an opportunity for us to accrue those funds over time without any use.
No, I'm just cautious. Sometimes the city in our past provides funds to a nonprofit, and then it just continues on indefinitely, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But if a new program were to come up, if we would have that flexibility, that's kind of just my question to the city manager and your understanding of the opioid abatement authority funds. I mean, honestly, my personal thoughts is, if you had a need for our money to get started, we haven't spent the 2022-23 funds. I guess we could allocate it, and it would take a little pressure, I guess. But I kind of really want to know that they were needed. No disrespect. That's kind of important to me, because we could allocate them next fiscal year to you.
Well, I will add, if I can, that the money that you've received today is only from 3 settlement companies. It comes from Janssen Distributors and Mallinckrodt. The big bulk of the money is not here yet. You're going to see that from Walgreens, Walmart, CVS. That's about $42 billion that's going to be shared among everyone, and several other settlement companies that haven't settled yet. So this is really a small piece of the pie of what you guys are going to be expecting to see over the next few years.
Over time, lots of opportunity to fund additional layers of support.
Right.
I'm going to invite Nick to come back because I made a gross error. This is not the topic that you need to recuse yourself, so feel free to correct me at any time. I welcome it, and I'm not sure if you have comments or questions for folks, but I think the recommendation from the city manager, once you dedicate and allocate funds, it's committed. And the city manager's recommendation to say, go with our support, our letter of support and support with this grant to go get the bulk of the money to get ripping and rolling. And then let's check back in 6 months, 3 months, whatever timeframe as the training and planning comes along. All of council, the seed's been planted that we have these funds. We're not quite sure. This is the first request. Doesn't necessarily mean that we won't get other requests that may complement and work well with the Hope House to achieve greater application and get the biggest bang for the buck of these dollars. So, Nick, did you have anything to? And again, my apologies.
It's okay. I like to be safe than sorry, but I agree. This was not the.
Yeah.
I attempt to recuse myself. I don't think I have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Other members of council have questions or? Yes, sir. Mr. Alligood.
Thank you very much for coming. And I want to suggest that the city council would be in full support of what your request is. And I think we're in support of the city manager. I'm just speculating now, the city manager's suggestion on how to allocate this money. I think we're eager to see this money do some good. And to do some good, I think we've got to spend it, but we need a program to spend it on in there. And that's what we're looking for, is that program. Now, the question that I have is, you had mentioned, Ms. Turner, that the program needs to be a new program for money to be spent. And so you're going to be established, but that won't be a new program when the money is allocated later. So am I mixing something up?
And that's the only way it would become a new program for us is if we decided to open a second house, if we were to expand and maybe open a woman's home at some point. That's a possibility. I don't know that will happen, but no, anything related to the Hope House would no longer be a new project
Right.
beyond this application.
And that's what I thought I was hearing. So from that standpoint, would it be better for us to allocate the money now, because it is a new program now, and not wait? Where is the need going to be the greatest in the right? Well, I'm suggesting that we would be in agreement with doing that in there.
Yeah,
So-
I think everyone's in support of the grant application. It's these other dollars, and I'd ask the city manager to respond to Mr. Alligood's question. Because if it isn't in 6 months from now, it would not be a new program.
As Ms. Turner said, there are a couple of issues here. One is there are several pots of money. The requirements that the Opioid Abatement Authority have are different than the direct distributions that we get from the distributors or other defendants in the national lawsuit. So we can take those funds and we could apply those to the Hope House anytime in the future. Okay. What we would have to do, I believe, and I hadn't heard the same information that Ms. Turner had, but if it was the case that we could not make an allocation from the opioid abatement funds to the Hope House, we could then save those for some other new use in the future. But in the meantime, again, we could use the direct awards to fund the Hope House in 6 months or 12 months or whatever period of time. And frankly, that's where we're going to get, as she said, most of the money anyway. I think we have about $21,000 plus today from the direct allocations, as
Then we
opposed
would
to
need to allocate that tonight.
we do or do not.
So the question is, will we need to allocate that money for the Hope House tonight?
No, those direct allocations, again, can be used at any time for the Hope House or any other purpose, without any requirements of it being a new use. But those specific allocations, again, the OAA funding may be tied to a new project, a new grant, but the majority of our funds we could use for the Hope House again in 6 months or 12 months or 2 years from now.
We'll be glad to come back and update you on the project and tell you how it is going and what progress we have had.
Is there an alternate program that you're suggesting to use these funds in the interim or?
There is nothing at this point in time. We've had discussions with the sheriff locally, Mr. Suter and Mr. Tyree and myself about, and it's outside of our region, even some type of facility where if somebody was being picked up by law enforcement, they wouldn't have to be detained by law enforcement if there was no place for them to go. It would be very short term, 24, 48 hour place where somebody could go and you'd know they were not in a situation where they could get they could recover from whatever they were suffering from that addiction without being without medical treatment. You know, again, the officer can't provide medical treatment. He or she may have to sit with that individual for 24, 48 hours, but they can't treat them. Whereas this facility would allow some treatment in a safe environment where they could come down from that high, if you will. So that's been discussed. There's been programs in the jail that have been discussed because, as it was noted, a lot of those people end up in jail and they need some type of medical or other treatments in jail so that when they get out, they will be more successful, especially if they're going to transition into a program similar to Hope House. It prepares them for that. So no definitive applications have been out there. There have been discussions. Even the Department of CSB could use the funds. The only reason I understand they have not had a conversation is they have absolutely no staff to allocate to a new program, even though they know the needs there. So they're in the wings. I would have to believe some of those will be forthcoming, but today this is the only one that has been organized and ready to go.
I want to clarify about a new program for the OAA funds, the Opioid Abatement Authority funds, of which for FY23, just for the public, it's $8,663. What we're learning is that, and we're supposed to get much less than that for the next 17, 16 years, usually in the realm of $1,800 to $2,000 a year. Just that 8,663 is just a really big number in FY23. But going forward, it's around $2,000 a year from the OAA. Every year we have to
Clarify, he's saying that the monies that will come in future years are less, but
They are from the 3 settlement companies that you have settled right now.
from the Opioid Abatement Authority only. I'm just focused on the Opioid Abatement
Those
Authority
funds are
because
coming- Yeah, those funds are coming from, right, but this is only because of 3 companies have settled. When more companies settle, those will increase as well. Because what happens is the Opioid Abatement Authority gets 35% of everything. And so those numbers
Okay,
will be
that's
divided
helpful.
among 133 localities when those other companies settle.
okay, that's helpful, because the chart that we have has 3 companies and then the OAA. And
the
so
big
the
guys.
OAA, again, I'm fixated on that. That has to go to a new program so that for the next, for the next 17 years, there has to be a new program each year that we can't allocate those funds.
let me, a question I'd have for Lori is, how long is the Hope House considered a new project worthy of funding from the government?
From the individual funds and the gold standard, it would only be considered a new project with this application. If we were to expand the project, like open a second house or something, that could be considered a new project, but as long as we just operate this house, then once this application is submitted tomorrow, it would no longer be a new project. Right.
Or even add additional programming at Hope House? I mean, if you added additional programming at the one Hope House.
I haven't asked that specific question to the authority. I would say probably not, because I think that would fall under supplementing an existing budget.
So forgive me if I'm asking, being confusing, but if the Opioid Abatement Authority funds can only support a new program each year, and we're getting them till 2039, does a new program have to exist each year to spend those dollars? So we're looking at 17. I just want to get this right, because if this is our one chance at a new program, I'd love to go ahead and allocate those $663 and not miss out on a new program because maybe another new program doesn't happen until FY 26.
Mr. Ziegler, you make several good points. And as I said earlier, this is a new funding source, a new state agency. I, like you, do not believe there's going to be a need for a new program for 17 years, or that would be an effective use of these funds. But we haven't maybe received that guidance yet because it is new. I did not hear it had to be a new grant myself, but we had different conversations with the staff of the OAA.
Well, I'm just gonna, let's just, since we're just a little unsure, we've got a lot of funds coming to us and we have an excellent program that we're excited about. And to be quite honest, if tonight you had been asking for $8,663, I think we would have risen to the occasion and provided those dollars. I know you're not asking for those dollars, but you understand this program really well. It's an exciting Hope House. I mean, and I wouldn't want to miss out on an opportunity. Just to be honest, to miss out on an opportunity because there will be more money and we will be able to support other programs. And if this helps the city, that we don't have to now try to find a new program. And I would like to make a motion that we definitely support the grant application. And I would be absolutely fine personally allocating the $8,663 from the Opioid Abatement Authority only to the Hope House as a part of this grant application to get the ball rolling, get those dollars spent.
I'd second that.
Very good. Motion is second. Any discussion? Ms.
My
Strong?
only question is, are we able to do that then?
Yes, we are. I would also indicate that if you're interested in doing that, you might want to, assuming you're going to approve the gold standard participation, also allocate those gold standard funds, that other 2,600 and some odd dollars at the same time.
Yes, please.
I think it's for the good of the public that we consider putting funds towards a program that is moving forward, and I think we should move forward with it.
Thank you, Nick. Anything else?
Thank you for putting up with my questions.
I just want to add that decision is helpful. I didn't want to go against anything that Jimmy suggested. It's helpful because the community foundation money can be used for other things. So it's a critical decision, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Lori. Greg, thanks for your work in getting us to this point and endeavors of the community in the specific project. Council, any further discussion on the matter?
We can still revisit the matter in 3 months or 6 months. We're not closing the door with this distribution. If we're wanting to distribute this and not be behind the 8 ball on a new project.
Nice. Well, with that, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, real quick, this is Jeremy, real quick. I just want to make sure for the record, does Mr. Ziegler's motion include the gold standard? That just wasn't clear to me from here. And I wanted to make sure that the minutes got that down correctly. Okay.
Yes, sir. It is intended to include that important point of including the extra 25% from the gold standard.
Very good.
And authorizing me to apply for the gold standard.
Yes. Sorry for the incomplete motion.
It's complicated.
It was a lengthy suggested motion to be sure. Jeremy, thank you for the clarification. That's certainly a big piece of getting it right. So for council's benefit, motion to support the grant application, allocate the dollar figure that Mr. Ziegler quoted before, and to participate in the application for the gold standard, and directing staff to take the necessary steps to accomplish all of that with the Community Foundation. I'd ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strong.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion-
And can always count on council to do the right thing. Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously, and thank you for raising the issue, Ms. Alexander, and sharing your insights and experiences. And again, thank you all for being here. I know it's been a long day already for you. 2 council meetings in one day. Congratulations on surviving, and have a great weekend. Next item on the agenda are the consideration of the minutes. They were provided in your packet, and would ask for if council has no objection, we can approve those as presented. Any changes or modifications? Hearing none, they stand approved. Next item is citizens' remarks and comments, and thankful for anyone who has signed up. And I'll ask the city manager to grab the sign-up sheet for me. And while he's doing that, remind people that we do ask you to sign up prior to the meeting to be recognized during citizens' remarks, and ask that you, when you present and speak to council, that you do the following things. Stand at the podium and state your name and address for the clerk to record for the record. Make your comments to the council as a whole. Be brief, state your position, and provide facts. Provide written statements and/or supporting materials to the clerk for distribution to the council and the city manager. Remind you that debate is prohibited, and we will all work to embrace that. And ask that you speak clearly, as we want to hear what you have to say. And depending upon, or generally, we ask that those speaking limit their comments to 3 minutes. And with that, I would like to invite Mike Gilmore to present to council, and we have your address on the form, so you can dispense of that. And Margaret Kirkby will be on deck.
Mayor Freeman, members of council, I am Mike Gilmore. I am one of your representatives on the Department of Social Services Board, as well as the Rockbridge Area Community Services Board. I'm not going to address those 2 boards tonight, other than being here for your item 15.3, if you have any questions about social services, and to invite all of you to the Community Services Board 40th anniversary next Thursday, May the 11th, from 5 until 7, 40 years. That's how long I've been in Lexington. All right. I am reading a letter from my wife to council. She could not be here tonight. The last time she wrote a letter to you, you were meeting by Zoom, and Council Member Smith read her letter, but I'm going to read it because I am in full agreement with it. The proposed Gold Star Memorial is a well-deserved honor for those who have died in service to our nation. I applaud the efforts of Washington Lee student Jaden Cooner to recognize their service sacrifice. May I state in defense of the following remarks. Our family has a long history of military service. Mike, my husband, that's me, is a former naval officer in the Vietnam era. His father served in the Atlantic and Pacific Theater in World War II. My father, my wife's father, retired from the U.S. Naval Submarine Service, so she grew up as a Navy junior. Our elder son served as a naval intel officer between college and law school during the Gulf War. Our younger son was protected by U.S. Marines and Navy SEALs while he was stationed at embassies in war-torn countries in Africa. And our daughter and grandchildren are currently in Okinawa, Japan, where our son-in-law is a career naval officer. The memorial has our wholehearted support. The location does not. Jordan's Point is Lexington's only accessible natural water feature and destination on the Maury. It is a jewel. We are forever grateful to Bill Blotter, the former city planner who transformed the former sewage plant with the original vision for Jordan's Point Park. Jordan's Point is only a few acres at best and has severe erosion problems on its steep banks. Starting with the large laddered sign that lists credits, there have been more and more unnatural encroachments of man-made features and signage that interfere with the views and are deteriorating. The signage are deteriorating. It seems everyone wants ownership for their project at this very precious and limited resource, unfortunately, to the point of destroying its natural views. Places where land, water, and sky meet are often considered sacred places. They point to stunning beauty not made by hand and freely given to all. I can understand why Cayena Point on the island of Oahu is considered sacred as a jumping off place from life to the hereafter. I can understand what inspired Mr. Cooner. The problem is that the memorial will obscure that inspiration for the citizens of Lexington and our visitors. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for being with us, Mike, and thank you for your service on the boards and the city. I guess it was the Community Services Board that brought you to town 40 years ago. So look forward to celebrating with you next week, and congratulations. Ms. Kirkby, welcome.
Hi, I'm Margaret Kirkby. I live at 301A Overhill Drive. I'm here to speak to the memorial as well. The master plan for Jordan's Point Park involved a lot of citizen participation. And so some people feel like there should have been more involvement in the most recent interest in putting the memorial there. People are suggesting other places in town. What I'm here to suggest is that the council develop some criteria to be used on all memorial requests so that you don't have to start from zero each time. And my ideas include things like what should get a memorial in the first place, who or what should have memorials, which city entities or the public should be involved in making decisions about whether or not or where a memorial should be. What types of materials can be used for memorials? We have a bench, a rock. We have artistic granite. My personal favorite is the paving bricks downtown in the sidewalks. And then what does the site require, such as accessible parking, water, bathrooms, things like that. Many years ago, 13 years ago, the city has approved an ordinance for permitted uses of parks, cemeteries, and open space. And I sent that to you earlier today. And so I thought that might prompt some ideas, because we put a lot of effort in we were involved in that, took a lot of effort to get that. And so that was our thinking at the time, and maybe some ideas can jump out at you that you could use that for developing criteria for memorials. So that's just a suggestion that I have. Develop criteria so that you don't have to start from zero each time.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkby. Appreciate you being here and sharing those insights with us. Next item, or I'm sorry, is there anyone else who would like to speak to council this evening? Hearing no one, I will close the citizens' remarks and comments at 7:57 and go straight to consent agenda, item 9.1, and ask for council's consideration.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Have a motion, Ms. Alexander. Thank you for the second. And ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Should be great fun for Main Street Lexington closure for the Rock the Bridge event. Item 10, unfinished business, the Horse Center request remains out there. No action or discussion this evening.
Mr. Mayor, I just, something under unfinished business. I feel like something was brought to our attention and think that we want to do a good job of keeping it on the radar and just asking if there's any update on 201 North Randolph Street. So I think I'm going to bring that up under unfinished business.
Okay.
Indefinitely, because I think that it's been 7 years and the citizens, it's impacting, it's not just their view shed, it is impacting the quality of life in the neighborhood. And so just if the city manager has any update on anything regarding that property.
I have spoken with Ms. Johnson since the last meeting to try and get an indication of what she's hoping for and maybe what her position is vis-a-vis the neighbors who own 201 Randolph. She said she did have a conversation after the last meeting with the owners. Her position has not changed. She would like to see some either immediate plans for improvement of that property or stepping forward toward a demolition of the property. So I told her that based on what I'd seen on that petition, there's a complaint that requires the city to do some enforcement action, and I will soon begin that with city staff. And of course, that will mean conversations with the owners to try and ascertain what they will be doing with the property, if they can or will make any improvements in the near future.
Thank you. Any other business? Thank you very much. And if I understood your comment, should we put it placeholder for an update for each meeting? I really would like that. I
Okay.
think it needs to stay on our radar. And
Sure.
anything that and again, it's private property. I get that, but anything that we can do
Mhm.
and to help move that process along, I think that we owe it to a lot of folks that live near that property for the last 7 years. And I'm sorry that Ms. Johnson and some others had to come and speak to us and get a petition to get that on our radar. But I think if it's on every agenda, we won't forget about it.
And I think this is an issue that affects the city at large. I mean, I think a good point was made if this was, on Main Street, would this have sat there that long? I mean, so I think that this is something that affects the entire city.
Anyone else? I guess from a historical standpoint, the fire occurred and this council worked hard to convince the owner not to demolish it and ask them not to demolish it and sell it, just for the record. It never came before this council. They withdrew their application before, because what happened was the ARB denied their application to demolish it. The applicant could have come before council, and if we would have denied it, they could have tried to do something for 12 months. After those 12 months, no matter what, they could have demolished it. They withdrew their application before it ever came before our council because they were willing, they sold it pretty quickly. I mean, within a few months, but they actually never did come before council. Thank you for the clarification. I recall that HLF came and made an appeal to council to deny it. I may be mistaken on that. May have been just individual contact from HLF. HLF may have spoken, but the application never appeared on our agenda for us to take action on. Right. And had we even taken action on it, the 12-month clock would have started and the owners could have potentially gotten to where what they may have wanted to do at that point, but they ended up selling it. So I think it's important, and members of council that have served on planning are much more aware of the enforcement process. The current owners, of course, have had it for close to 2 years. And when I contacted them, they said their intentions are to work towards restoring it, but they hadn't begun that process in earnest because they worked with the contractor to allow their property to be used as laydown for the water and sewer project for that neighborhood, which I think was a positive for not just the neighborhood, but the entire community. And I'm hopeful that neighbors will talk to one another, but the piece that, as I understand it, it's what I recall with Press Brown's building, you issue an order of things to be done. When it starts, it stops the clock and gets reset until they start going again. So I think it'll be important for the neighbors and the community to support those owners in whichever direction they go forward. And if that being on our agenda every meeting is helpful, all the better. Yeah, I think it's beyond helpful that it stays on our radar. So thank you for accepting that.
I'm sure that all the people who signed the petition would appreciate that.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is reports and commissions. Blue Ridge Resource Authority, Mr. Smith.
Blue Ridge Resource Authority will meet Monday and have a hearing On a new tipping fee schedule, which sets the base rate at $60.50 per ton for municipal member customers. That's all. And well, put a placeholder on that, and we will likely we will discuss our budget, likely adopt it with the capital improvement plan. That's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Question.
Any questions? Meeting's at 4:30, time change for the Blue Ridge Resource Authority. So if you'd like to talk trash on Mondays, 4:30 this coming Monday, I believe. Main Street Lexington, Mr. Smith.
You want to do this? The Gateway Triangle Garden is complete! Exclamation point. Flowers will go into the raised planters once the frost danger is passed, probably in the next 2 weeks. Main Street is also working on a new wayfinding program, which puts QR codes on some downtown light poles, which will direct you to side street traffic to get people off Main Street and down the side streets that are just as important to our business community as the businesses on Main Street. All parties will have final approval before the official rollout, that being the city tourism and other businesses. Get ready for the annual dance party, Rock the Bridge.
I like it.
Saturday, June 3rd. Jeez, I taught PE today and substitute for Lilburn, so I'm
Stuck in middle school.
Yeah, it's been a long day.
He's worn out.
Saturday, June 3rd, 5:30 to 10. Under the Nelson Street Bridge, admission is $10. Tony Cam and the Funk All-Stars are the headliner. Opening is local legends Fatty Lumpkin and the Love Hogs.
Wow.
It's alumni weekend, crazy May, graduations, alumni. I said that, alumni weekends. It's just a great time to get outside and explore downtown and watch spring. Any questions?
Was very good.
Better?
It was very good.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Appreciate that.
How many students did you entertain today?
The entire Lilburn Middle School student body.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Planning Commission, Ms. Strawn.
Commission met last Thursday and we continued our discussion of accessory dwelling units. And as I told you last meeting, we approved the change in lot frontage for multifamily housing, except that at the same meeting that I told you that we passed the resolution saying we should address that.
Mhm.
So we are going to, cross our Ts and dot our Is and revisit that at our next meeting and likely reapprove what we just approved, but we will take up that issue again at the next meeting, and then it will come to council at our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Very good.
Is that clear as mud or?
Really approve it.
Right.
Fair enough. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Strawn? Regional Tourism Board, Mr. Betts.
I do not have a report this week, but I believe we'll be meeting next week, so I should have a lengthy report for our following meeting.
Very good. Look forward to it. Raro, Mr. Ziegler.
The Raro Board of Directors met yesterday, and we talked about our spring sports. They're progressing. We will be hosting a large Cal Ripken under 10 and under district tournament in June, at the end of June at Fox Field, which is kind of exciting. So of course, we have our own programs, but then that's when we bring in some kids from outside, some other teams. And of course, we've got teams in that tournament also, but all sorts of softball, baseball are going on. As far as the summer is concerned, we are up to 11 co-ed teams as of yesterday. That could have gone up, but that's exciting. That program is one that we added last year and it's growing. We also, of course, hope to have co-ed 4-on-4 volleyball this summer. And we have the adventure programs that I think I've shared before about the kayaking and the backpack hiking programs. And right now, I think we have about 20 kids signed up for the kayaking week, which is exciting. So, I mean, that's something that we've never done before. And we're thrilled that about 20 kids so far have signed up. One thing that if you've been to Brubaker Field, we've got the pavilion, the roof is on, it's looking great. We had some picnic tables delivered, but a few of them were damaged. And so they will be en route, not at Brubaker, but en route, and they will be replaced. But that's coming along. And then we are expecting to have the new storage building that the Planning Commission had approved back in February, you might remember. That should be constructed May 11 and 12. So that's, again, all exciting things. Lots of kids using our facilities, and we're always excited that adults will be using our facilities for softball all summer. And of course, pickleball is a world of its own right now. It's doing very well. And the working with the Rockbridge Pickleball Club was really good for Raro. And so we're thrilled about that partnership.
Fantastic.
One comment, the Raro radio ads are great and the kids who are doing them did a super job.
Thank you.
Is that your idea, David?
No.
Talk a little bit about you have 20 children signed up for kayak. I'm not aware that Raro has an inventory of kayaks. How is that being accomplished?
So we're working with Journey Outdoors. And so at least there could be other groups, but I know Journey Outdoors, and that was part of our staff's goal of working with private businesses in the community. And so I don't believe that we are going to actually have that vast number of kayaks. There will be some instruction, almost, I'm not going to say classroom, so that did not, but there will be some instruction to the kids, obviously safety and how to do things the right way. And then they will be in the water also, make sure that it's safe. And I think it'll be a very controlled environment. This is not whitewater rafting. It is not, it is controlled introduction to these awesome outdoor sports. And the goal is then that kids get some kayak time or some time, and then that they go back and want to, their parents to, maybe go do it with them or something to that effect. But it is not going to be wide open, 20 kids going down the Maury, unsupervised or anything.
That's too bad. That comes in their 20s. Very good. Thank you for that clarification. And certainly one of the best classrooms is the outdoor classroom. And they will be in great hands with those folks. I wasn't sure if it was in conjunction with the gentleman that we approved to set up shop in the Jordan's Point, but the collaboration is terrific. Thank you. Threshold, Ms. Alexander.
Yes, Threshold met last Wednesday, April 26th. And as you know, Threshold has been in the research and brainstorming phase for a few months now, with many ideas floating around. So at this point, there is a push to focus on actionable goals and focus on those that are fundamental to the mission of Threshold. And if there are projects that are going to require funding, then of course, we discussed that council will have to take those projects into consideration. The survey going out will help us to determine the status of the underutilized properties in the city, and a draft of letter of that survey was reviewed with various editing suggestions that will be going, or maybe by now has gone to the city attorney for approval and back to the planning department for distribution. We reviewed the current list of underutilized properties with the expectation that as more properties are discovered, they will be added to the list to reach out to. And near the end of the meeting, members were advised of our code of ethics that we approved here at council. And at the next meeting, we will review that and discuss it at our next meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for Ms. Alexander? Wonderful. Maury Service Authority, Mr. Alligood.
Thank you. The Maury Service Authority Board met last Tuesday and approved, after having a public hearing last Tuesday, the new rates. and the rates were representative of the wholesale rates, and then the Lexington City rates are added to that. So there were 4% raise for wholesale rates and additional 3 totaling 7% for city water rate increases in there. And just a note, at the public hearing, there were no comments from anyone other than MSA board members about that. No comments for or against, just no comments in there whatsoever. The MSA also heard a report. One of the things that I have been advocating for strongly at MSA is the adoption of a preventive maintenance program, as well as having items, I'm going to use the phrase, on the shelf for repair rather than operating with a crisis mode to jump through hoops to get things fixed when they break. It's better to have a spare, an operating spare available. And so that's happening every time we have an opportunity to do that, and it's paying off. We had a breakdown of a pump that was changed out without having to shut parts down and jump through hoops to get it repaired. So it's beginning to take effect. You just have to keep pushing on it to oversee it. And separately, but in the same meeting, we approved a purchasing protocol for this huge project that's fixing to start. It's kind of started. This is the modernization of the water treatment plant as well as the drinking water plant, the treatment plant there. And so it would surprise some maybe to know that we didn't have a purchasing protocol for this type of thing in there. So we're making steps in the right direction to put these things in place to get ready for this large business. And the next meeting was advertised of the MSA board for Tuesday on May 23rd, 5 o'clock in this room. We meet once a month.
So just briefly, is the purchasing protocols, it set limits to where you have to get multiple bids, or what does it involve?
Yes, there are threshold dollar amounts where there has to be an open bid above a certain amount, and in between those amounts, the executive director of the MSA can do it. And of course, all this is subject to board oversight as well. And the purchasing protocol mirrors the state protocol for purchasing. So we didn't have in place this previously. So this is new and breaking new ground, but it's happening.
So is there financing being lined up for what you're embarking on right now? I mean, what?
Finance is not lined up yet. We haven't formalized the articles of incorporation, but the MSA board is getting things in place for being the borrower for these funds. And so that hasn't been formalized yet, but it's one step at a time to make that happen. So it hasn't happened yet, but it's in line to happen, and not next month. I was expecting a report from the engineers on the latest cost estimate for the wastewater plant at the last meeting, and it was delayed and projected for the next meeting. That there are some in-between meetings that are scheduled to happen this month. And then by the time we have our next board meeting on May 23rd, we should get the end result from that. And we're looking forward to having a similar meeting that was held at the Horse Center that talked about the water treatment plant. I mean, a similar presentation from the engineers where all the local representatives from all the localities will have an opportunity to hear it at one time.
One more question. First, thank you for serving on the MSA. I don't think everyone realizes how important your service is on the MSA and has been for the last few years. In your opinion, do you feel that as the MSA is going down this path and you're talking about procuring, and borrowing, do you feel that the MSA is moving at a adequate pace, too fast, to avoid mistakes? Because obviously, the city has borrowed money. We have bond counsel. We've got a finance director. We've done this. We do this. The IDA. We borrow money, and there's a lot that goes into it. And we used to be the fiscal agent for the MSA, and now they're kind of doing it on their own. Are you comfortable with the pace, and that the guidance and the legal guidance and the financial guidance that the MSA is receiving to embark on a multi-million-dollar project? If we get one shot at doing it right, and
That's right. I think things are falling into place, items that you are talking about. I think they're falling into place. I've always been of the opinion that MSA could move faster. I always thought, I've been attending MSA meetings for quite a few years prior to becoming a member of city council. And I was disappointed for those years prior to being on city council as to how slow things seem to go with the MSA. They didn't have a preventive maintenance program. That's been amended. We're moving in that direction. It'll be improved, of course, once these modernizations occur. But it's occurring now. Things are falling into place. MSA has contracted now with Davenport for financial advice, the same company that the city uses for it. So there we'll have the same agent in that regard, which will help pass information along and coordinate things among Rockbridge County and Lexington City and MSA. The I's are getting dotted slowly, and the T's are being crossed slowly in there. So I'm comfortable that we're moving in the right direction and certainly not moving at too fast a pace. But we're moving as opposed to not moving.
Right. I mean, ultimately, the debt that the two customers are responsible for could far exceed all of the total debt that the city has combined right now.
Right. When you told it, which is
So it is incredibly important that the MSA board, that the authority, just does their due diligence, because again, the magnitude of the debt, if this goes off, and as we expect it might over the next, multiple years, will far exceed the amount of debt of two schools and water sewer. That we currently have.
it is very likely to be the biggest project that has happened in this area that government has been responsible for.
Thank you, Mr. Alligood. Next item on the agenda is mayor's report, and I have two items. One, for your place this evening is a listing of folks for appointment to various boards. Some of them are folks that are re-upping, and I'll read through them very quickly. The ARB, Caroline Alexander, a 4-year term to begin July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2027. ARB candidate Ian Small, who's one of the owners of the Appalachian Sage, if you're not familiar with them. 4-year term, immediate, replacing Elizabeth Teef's unexpired term ending in June 30, 2024. Building Code, Fred Kirchner is willing to serve again, a 4-year term beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30, 2027. Zoning Appeal Board, Jim Giannini, 5-year term, July 1, 2023, ending June 30, 2028. And we have an opening on that if there's anyone listening or in the audience who's interested. Cemetery Board, Marquita Dunn, Trina Welsheimer, and Leon Joe Henning for terms, 2-year terms that would be immediate, ending on August 31st, 2024. And David Passmore and Jeannie Van Ness, 2-year terms that would start immediately, ending August 31st, 2023. And we also have one opening on the cemetery board. IDA, Bill King is agreed to continue to serve a 4-year term. It would begin immediately, ending April 30, 2027. The library, McKinley Williams, his term on the Rockbridge Regional Library Board, 5-year term, July 1, 2023, ending July 1, 2028. Planning Commission, application from Gladys Hopkins, a 4-year immediate start for a vacancy, and that would be ending June 30, 2024. And we anticipate 2 openings. Blake Chester and Matt Tuckler have indicated they do not wish to continue on. And unless there's an objection, I've asked Janie to advertise that in the News Gazette the last week of May and beginning of June to create greater awareness and hopefully find some folks that have an interest that we haven't crossed our paths. RARO, Troy Hall, 4-year term, begin immediately, but ending unfilled term June 30 of 2025. And David Ziegler to re-up for a 4-year term, July 1, 2023, ending June 30, 2027. And then Threshold, Nadine Craney and Fred Kirchner, 3-year terms beginning July 1, 2023, ending June 30, 2026. And 2 openings remain on Threshold. So I'd ask for council's consideration on those and wanted to take the time to read those into the record.
Move to approve the appointments as presented.
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any discussion? I just want to give a nod to Janie for her support in keeping track of these and updating the website, and also contacting each of these individuals to let them know of the requirements and responsibilities. There are a lot of moving parts, and she does it with grace. So in the week that we especially are focused on recognizing Janie, thank you very much for your help and support. And with that, a roll call vote. Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. The other item is we contractually owe the city manager review, and wanted to see if there's anyone on council who felt inspired or wanted to volunteer to lead the review for the city manager this year. And not seeing anybody jumping out of their seats, I will contact you all offline and discuss and maybe draw straws to lead that charge to get it accomplished. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number of topics this evening. I'll try and get through them relatively quickly. We've been here at it a while already, but something we don't see often in the city is graffiti. However, in the last 3 weeks, we've seen actually 3 instances of graffiti in the city, and the police department and public works are vigilantly watching for anything new that pops up and will remove it immediately. Segueing into the police department report, the WNL organizers of MockCon have been meeting with the department to plan for the 2024 mock convention, so they're well ahead of schedule. Corporal Haston has met with Jason White to go over crisis planning in the schools. He also attended the Rising 6th Grader event and the PTA Family Fun Night as a result of his position as SRO. The speed trailer has been in the area of West Nelson and East Denny Streets to reinforce good driving behavior now that the bridge work has been completed in that area. Chief Green and HR Director Robbie Bailey have met with 2 classes at SVU to get feedback on the recruiting video and have provided additional feedback to the production company creating the video. The monthly community walk was conducted on Tucker Street. Chief Green attended a victims advisory activity in Richmond sponsored by Attorney General Miaris and a Blue Ridge Community Justice meeting. In the fire department update, Dr. Jessica Meritz met with the B shift for dinner and discussion of the relationship between Carillion and the Lexington Fire Department Emergency Medical Services. And as you recall, Dr. Merritt's recently was named the medical director of the hospital emergency department. In this capacity, she's meeting with all shifts and staff at the department, fire department, that is, to assure lines of communication are well established and understood, and to be sure the efforts of LFD are well coordinated with the efforts within the emergency department. Chief Dickerson serves as the locality's board representative on the Regional EMS Council, and the Regional EMS Council represents 5 counties and the cities within them and provides support service to EMS service delivery across these communities, and they've been meeting in their capacity recently. Lieutenant Nick Ramsey and firefighter medic Jeremy Nicely are attending the firefighters training conference to continue to sharpen their training skills. Our new ladder truck, Tower 9, is present and accounted for and on duty in Lexington and Rockbridge County. LFD staff is training on it now, and the many improved features of the vehicle will permit faster and more effective responses to larger and more difficult fires that we fight from time to time in the community. So come by the department and take a look. Monthly EMS responses by Lexington Fire Department in the city of Buena Vista continue to remain in a lower range than had been true several months ago. Over the last 4 months, the average calls responded to by our department has been under 11. For the previous 4 months, it was 25 per month. So it appears Buena Vista has done a good job increasing their capacity to respond to the calls in their city. In the DSS facility, item of discussion later, but we've had good conversation, which has been virtual, with the Richmond offices of the Department of General Services, the Virginia Department of Health, and the Office of Drinking Water to discuss needs in the facility and the means by which these offices would pay for their share of a cost of any facility that we might construct. And after many months, it was very positive to see and hear they are finally engaged in this process. On a negative note, the earmark request we submitted to Senators Kane and Warner was not moved forward by either senator. So this effort, if you will, at this point is DOA. Apparently there were some severe funding limits and they were quite restrictive. And so the senators could not move those, our request forward. The popular annual financial report is annually conducted by a VMI cadet, and the current report is finished when we present it to the community in one of the immediately upcoming meetings. So you will see that within the next few weeks to come. Floyd SK Renovations, our finance director, Jennifer Bell, is working with Rockbridge County Schools staff to identify the actual cost of the renovations of this facility and what the city's share of the project will be. She's also worked to be sure that the state construction funds that were received by the schools can be used for debt service for this need, and that is in fact the case. Rockbridge County Schools energy saving programs was a item of discussion at some of our recent budget meetings. And I have asked Dr. Philip Thompson to provide us some information on that. And he's provided a recent report on that program. And I'll provide that report to you as city council so you can review it. I did review it very briefly, and it's very typical of some of these reports you'll see by these efforts and initiatives. So it may or may not be as helpful as any of you would like, but it's there for your review. A little news from Brushy Hills. The Friends of Brushy Hills have asked that very limited signage be placed on the boundary of specific areas of the Brushy Hills to alert hunters that heavy human presence occurs in these protected areas and hunting is not allowed. Several hunting blinds have been recently positioned at the boundary of the area with shooting lanes extending into the area. 911 center was recently damaged by a lightning strike. And since we are the fiscal agent, we submitted the bill of $4,051 to the insurance company. However, any portion of the bill that is not paid will be paid by the center itself and then split by the 3 jurisdictions that are served by the center. I should actually say 4 because VMI also is served and does financially participate. So that is my report, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Council members. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and respond.
Any questions for the city manager? Lots going on and lots accomplished. Jim, thank you. Greatly appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is city attorney. And Jeremy, we didn't do a mic test beforehand, but Janie's worked some magic, and so far we've heard you beautifully.
Well, hopefully it's the new setup. Maybe that's helping out as well. But
The two are
thank you,
syncing up
Mr. Mayor.
well.
What's that?
The two are syncing up well. Thank you.
Good. The only thing I wanted to mention, Mr. Mayor, members of council, was the monument at Jordan's Point. I know there's been some discussion about that, and I thought it was worth bringing to council's attention that what has happened thus far, as I've seen it, is a approval of the monument in concept, but no specific property has been dedicated or conveyed for that purpose. And there are procedures that the city would have to go through in order to convey property to a third party. And so there would be opportunity down the line for public hearings and such as you go through that process. And I just wanted to bring that up because I know there has been, it seems, some belief that we've already gotten to the end of the process, but we're really at the very beginning of that process.
Thank you, sir. Members of council have
And
any questions?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Hearing none. Anything else, Jeremy, or is that one?
No, that's it. Thank you, sir.
Terrific. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is new business 15.1, consideration of adoption of fiscal year 2024 budget and the fiscal year 2024 through 2028 capital improvements plan. I'll call on the city manager.
Mr. Mayor, Jennifer Bell, our finance director, will initiate this conversation and request from staff.
Hi, good evening. Since our last work session, I've only made very minor changes to the budget that is before you. And that is adjusting the body worn cameras on the CIP to denote that that project will move forward only if we receive the grant funding. And I also updated the city's cost of the Floyd SK renovation project just based on the estimate that was given to us when the superintendent made her presentation to us a couple weeks ago. And then just quickly to review the revenues in our FY24 proposed budget are 8% over our FY23 budget. And that's largely due to the meals and lodging taxes. We're looking to finish FY23 far ahead of budget on both of those line items, as well as our increased interest that we've been receiving on our investment funds. And we expect that higher interest rate to continue through FY24. The last main contributor to that increase in revenues is the county revenue sharing payment, which is also largely based on meals and lodging taxes, and they're seeing an uptick as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jen. Members of council have any questions? If not, thank you, Jen.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'd like to touch on some of the expenditures because Jennifer Bell did touch on the revenue side, but of course, you've seen and heard that we are recommending a 5% compensation increase for our city staff. There are no other substantial initiatives, but I would add that there's a $50,000 reserve or contingency line for city council should you have specific needs throughout the coming fiscal year that you'd like to allocate some funds for. So there's a few dollars available for that. We also, of course, are setting aside some for our capital improvements plan and also for our equipment replacement fund. And we have a pretty aggressive schedule of capital improvements that we are undertaking or hope to undertake in the coming fiscal year, as well as an adequate amount of equipment replacement to be sure we keep up with the needs of keeping new equipment and highly functional equipment on the streets. So I think our budget is very sound and it does address the majority of city wants and needs out there. I should add, speaking of wants and needs, is that, of course, we are allocating a significant amount of money to the capital improvement fund for the specific purpose of making improvements at Jordan's Point Park. So there are funds specified for that particular use. Other than that, I just want to make sure that you've heard this, but some of the citizens who may be listening and maybe anybody in the audience is aware of some of the more significant initiatives in the budget and where we're spending those tax dollars that they continue to provide to us so that we can provide good services to our community. So if there are any questions, as Ms. Bell said, she or I'd be happy to answer those.
And one thing that I know council kind of heard at a work session, those significant funds allocated for Jordan's Point Park, we had Patrick Madigan, our Director of Public Works, and you also kind of brief us on some of the potential improvements that could be done with those funds. But one of the suggestions that we made during that work session is that he would come speak and be on the agenda and present to us again, but more for the public to hear what we're thinking about. Again, just before we start, dare I say the word, putting a shovel in the ground or doing anything at Jordan's Point Park, that the public is aware of that and has a chance to hear it and maybe ask any questions. I think you recount very well the discussion and the intent of council to have fully understand what the projects are. Allocating the funds, very happy to do so, but would like to know about the new slide before it's installed, so to speak. Very good. I would ask for council's consideration if you'd like to tonight. No obligation, but just as good as any. I would point out one thing that, one thing that's been on my mind is that our budget does take and use a lot of that interest that we are earning. And while interest rates are harmful if you're trying to borrow, in this respect, we have a lot of funds in the bank that we may be using for some large projects, and so we're earning a lot of interest on that, but that interest is being used in our budget. And so whereas maybe a year ago we earned, let's just say $100,000 of interest. If this year we're earning $800,000 of interest on that money, that's in our general fund. And that's a lot of money in lieu of a tax increase in a way. I mean, and so I just point that out because it's something that I've worried about and thought about because we're spending that money. But that being said, thanks to city staff, to Jen, to Jim, and of course, all the department heads for putting the budget together. And I would make a motion to approve the FY24 budget and the CIP. So I can approve them at the same time.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any objection to considering them together? Hearing none. Fantastic. Any further discussion? Hearing none, would ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Ziegler. Aye. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alligood.
Aye.
Ms. Strawn.
Aye.
Mr. Betts.
Aye.
Ms. Alexander.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. I think a well thought out and productive budget that we have for 2024 and certainly capital improvement plan, and we'll be doing lots of good things for our citizens and neighbors. Thank you all for your time and talents, and to staff for the many hours and adjustments as we've worked on this, and hope that our friends in Richmond will be equally as successful in adopting a budget sooner than later. The next item on the agenda, 15.3, Department of Social Services. This time, Mr. Betts, I'll invite you. Thank you very much. And actually, hell, you can just go anytime you want. You get a free pass. And I'll call on City Manager to introduce this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is before you this evening, and it's a rather quick turnaround for our staff from both Rockbridge County, City of Buena Vista, and our legal staff to bring this before you. We've had a somewhat of a difficult time and a vexing time working on the agreement between our three localities so that we could move forward with the purchase of property and the initiating of a new facility for the Department of Social Services. Not that there's been any real problems. It's just that there's a lot of detail involved. We have waited for some time to get information from the state so that we could sort of build that into some of our considerations, have not received timely response from the state. And then we've also now at this point in time had the option on the property come due. Buena Vista had an option on the purchase of this property, and we need to move forward. So I bring this to you under those circumstances this evening. Because the agreement itself is not before you, you do not have commitment, legal commitment from the other partners, that is the City of Buena Vista and Rockbridge County. So what we're asking tonight is that you would actually authorize us to begin or to make the purchase of this property without that legal document in place or approved. I will say I received a text from the city attorney for BV, and the City of Buena Vista did approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to pay their share of the funds for this building as soon as we close or thereafter. So they were able to do that because they're meeting tonight as well. They are also in a position where of course, the legal agreement is not available for them to approve. At the last meeting of the Board of Supervisors, we had hoped again the agreement would be ready. It was not. Our three attorneys have worked on it steadily over the last several days. And Mr. Carroll can comment later on that, but I believe that document is finally complete or very close to being complete. So all three localities will see it at hopefully our next go round of meetings. So again, what you're being asked tonight is that you approve a motion that would allow city staff to go ahead and close on the property. The city of Lexington would own the property. We'd be the fiscal agent for the management of the property, just as we are today with tourism, with the RARO, and with the 911 center. And as the county is on the landfill and the jail and some other facilities as well, which is a common way that we organize joint services in our area. Lexington was picked for a number of reasons. We have the capacity to be able to do this. Rockbridge County, of course, will in all likelihood be soon undertaking borrowing for the jail project, which again is another large project like the MSA that's very real on the horizon. And then at some point in time, they'll be borrowing for Rockbridge High School. So we have the capacity both financially and administratively to manage this project. It makes sense that it all be in one basket, if you will. We discussed the opportunity if Buena Vista owned the property, we'd be the fiscal agent. It doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. So again, you're being asked to approve the project tonight. I did talk to Spencer Suter, our county administrator, and he said that he talked to every board member. All 5 of them gave 100% support for the project. So while this isn't legally where we'd like to be from a standpoint of seeing the document approved by each and every one of our 3 localities, we have, I believe, the commitment from our partners that this can move forward and you can safely make this motion to approve the purchase of the property. So again, that's what I'm asking of you this evening. Our city attorney, who has been working even today on the legal agreement, is here and he can brief you on the specifics of that. And I'd ask that he do that now if that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
I think that'd be fine.
Mr. Carroll?
Thanks, Jim. Yep, Brian Kearney and Vicki Huffman and I were working on this agreement this afternoon and finished it up a little before 5. Brian was on his way out to the city council meeting. It's, I'd say 97% done. There's a few little things that we want to just touch on and finish up. But the framework is the agreement requires all 3 entities to pay a portion of both capital costs and operating costs. It divides those into 2 buckets, capital costs and operating costs. The capital costs are going to be divided based upon population. Currently, that would be 61.7% for Rockbridge, 18.1% for BV, and 20.2% for Lexington. Operating costs are going to have a separate component to the cost splitting analysis. It's going to be the social services, kind of their caseload is going to come into play into the analysis. As that stands currently, it would be 63% for Rockbridge, 20%, I'm rounding, 20% for Buena Vista, and 16% for Lexington of operating costs. The city of Lexington would receive a 5% fee for its administrative role as fiscal agent. The fee would be based off of the operating costs only. So it's 5% of operating costs, not 5% of capital costs. Decisions with regard to future capital expenditures will be made by the city. The only caveat to that is if Buena Vista and Rockbridge County both objected to a proposed expenditure, then they could overrule the decision with regard to a capital expenditure. There will be multiple users of this facility. It's going to be big enough to have multiple users, and those will be charged. Those entities will be charged rent. That rent will be divided 90% to go towards debt service and 10% to go towards a capital maintenance account. So the 3 localities will only be called upon to pay for debt service in those percentages I mentioned if the 90% rent figure is not sufficient to cover all the debt service itself. And the 10% will be used to build up to pay future capital expenditures. And again, if that fund is not sufficient to cover those future capital expenditures, that's when the localities would be required to pay the additional sums based on those percentages. The agreement is structured as a 50-year agreement. Given the nature of this agreement, being a capital investment and acquiring property and developing property, there's a component of it that is you're familiar with this concept and in many other respects with regard to local government. It's subject to appropriation. So there's an annual appropriation requirement for each of the three localities. But that's the framework that we've structured. It is consistent, as I understand, and as Jim has indicated, with some of the other multi-jurisdictional agreements that the city and the other city and the county have participated in. And it seems to accomplish the objective. And yes, it's not yet ready to be put pen to paper, but it's right on the cusp of that. And at this point, what Jim is asking is that we go forward with the narrow purchase of the property. Obviously, we're not incurring any debt for the development of the building or anything like that. That would not occur until after the agreement is in place. But the current ask is for the go ahead to purchase the property, as the option on the property is set to expire next week, as I understand it.
And has the purchase price been negotiated already?
Yes, ma'am. It is $438,000.
You may recall, I don't remember the exact timing, but we had a joint meeting at the Horse Center to talk about the idea of purchasing this, and each city put in, I think it was $5,000 to, or $3,000, something to secure the right to purchase it. And this is the conclusion, if we can, depending upon council's consideration. Jeremy, thank you for the summation. Mr. Alligood.
That money that you just mentioned, Mr. Mayor, was applied toward the purchase price.
Correct. If for some reason we weren't able to close in the timely manner as this is asking, the funds would be retained by the person that owns the property. It was a non-refundable.
And there has been a $9,000 deposit towards that $438,000 purchase price.
Mr. Smith.
I'm glad to hear we're almost there. What can you shed some light on what we're still hanging up on?
There was one issue that came up as to the procedure for approval. And I'm going to get into the weeds here. It has to do with whether this is a pure capital expenditure contract or is it a services contract, because there is some discussion in here about sharing costs. And if it becomes a services contract, the county may have to adopt it by a resolution. by an ordinance, which would require advertising and would take them a little bit longer to get it adopted. It's more procedural than anything else. If it also is a services contract, it is less likely to be subject to appropriation, as I mentioned. But that is just a function of whether the lawyers sit down and decide it's a services contract or a capital expenditure contract. We're not planning on changing any of the language of the contract or the deal at this point. I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. Smith. It is like in the weeds lawyering that is not going to change the nature of the arrangement.
I guess that's what I wanted to hear.
Thank you. Other questions? If not, I would ask for council's consideration.
I move to authorize and direct the city manager to proceed with closing on the purchase of the Mountain View site in Buena Vista, consisting of tax map number 14-A-A1, which has 1.236 acres, and tax map number 14-A-1B, which has 4.810 acres, for use as a site for a health services building to house the local Department of Social Services, and further authorize and direct the city manager to take such other acts as may be necessary to complete the purchase of the property.
Second. Have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, would ask for a roll call vote. Ms. Strawn?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
Mr. Alligood?
Aye.
Ms. Alexander?
Aye.
And Mr. Betts is excused and not participating, so the motion carries 5-0 unanimously. Thank you all very much. Good work. And Jim, sign well. Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add? A little bit late, but
Thank you.
desired outcome. Very good. Very good. Mr. Betts, I'll invite you to come back and join us. Thank you. Not aware of any other items. We have no closed session. So unless there's any objection, we will stand adjourned and can't close the meeting at 8:54 PM. Thank you all very much. And as we won't be
Good night.
meeting before, have a happy Mother's Day, all of you.
Okay.